on the Good Morning Artesia radio show, and thanks for the update there from Christy Scales. The Cowboys, can you believe it? They're in the playoffs, and our resident Cowboys fan, Thomas Beard, our general sales manager, who actually has in his house one of the seats that came out of the old Texas Stadium. So he's a diehard Cowboys fan, and every year he starts out, this is going to be the year. And I don't know, maybe this year he might be right. They're playing pretty good right now.
Well, we'll see after this weekend. I occasionally watch the Cowboys. I occasionally watch the Chiefs to see Mahomes, Baker Mayfield with the Browns. I mean, but if you have 4 or 5 you like, then you have a chance that you may actually still be rooting for somebody if you're one-horse pony.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It'll be interesting to see. You mentioned a couple of the rising stars in the league, and of course, Dak Prescott he's earned that money that he's supposed to get at that level, and but then again, San Francisco, there are actually quite a number of 49ers fans around. I've started to hear from them this week. So,
well, I've never been a 49ers or a New England Patriots fan, so I'm on the wrong side of that coin.
Well, and I grew up in the Midwest. I mentioned this earlier. I grew up in Iowa, and most of the people around there, if you were on the eastern side of Iowa, you were more likely a Bears fan or Vikings or Green Bay. Yeah. And then if you were on the west side of the state, Kansas City was not too far away, and there were or Minnesota Vikings fans. Right. But over the years, there wasn't a whole lot to root for when it came playoff time. So the playoffs would come about, and then the Cowboys would be in the playoffs a lot, and they'd call themselves America's team. And up there in the upper Midwest, we're like, who calls themselves America's team? And so we would tend to root for whoever
was opposing. And, that became probably one of their best gimmicks. Yep. Because everybody either loved them or hated them, and so they got lots of viewership because everybody was rooting strongly one way or another.
That's right.
There was no in between.
Yeah, I mean, I rooted for the Steelers. I'd root for the Broncos or root for the Patriots back in the day when they play the Cowboys.
Anybody who was playing the Cowboys. But I mean, as far as a way to entice people into the stands and viewership on the TV, it worked out really well for them.
It did. We need to take one more quick break. We'll come back and continue our discussion with the mayor, talk about last night's city council meeting right after this.
With the SRN News Business Report, I'm Bill Alexander. A meat distributor based in Oregon has recalled more than 28,000 pounds of ground beef because of concerns the meat may be contaminated with E. coli bacteria. The raw ground beef products from Interstate Meat Distributors were produced on December 20th and shipped to Oregon, California, Washington, Arizona, Nevada, Utah, and Wyoming. The recalled products had establishment numbers EST 965 inside the USDA mark of inspection or printed next to the timestamp and use or freeze date. Bank of America slashed the amount it charges customers when they spend more than they had in their accounts and plans to eliminate entirely its fees for bounced checks. On Wall Street, the Dow up 183 points. The NASDAQ rose 210, and the S&P 500 ahead 42 points. With the SRN News Business Report, I'm Bill Alexander in Washington.
This is Dallas Cowboys football 2021.
Hurts in the gun. Goddard sets up right.
Only heard here.
Back to throw. Check out. Over the middle. Intercepted by Diggs.
All season.
Right sideline. 30. Diggs 20. Diggs house.
Sunday afternoon, it's your Cowboys and the San Francisco 49ers. Live from AT&T Stadium on this Dallas Cowboys radio network station.
Pre-game at 1:30, kickoff at 2:30 on 92.9 The Brand. Brought to you by Big O Tires.
Attention farmers, ranchers, contractors, and dairymen. Bill Johnston Auctions announces the Pecos Valley Farm and Construction Consignment Auction Saturday, January 15th, 9 a.m. sharp, just north of Artesia on Highway 285 near the old Cottonwood Winery. Construction equipment, tools, parts, supplies, and more. Call Mike today to consign your equipment. 575-760-6195. All consignments must be in by 5 p.m. on Friday, January 14th. No consignments will be accepted on sale day. The Pecos Valley Farm and Construction Consignment Auction, Saturday, January 15th, 9 a.m. sharp, just north of Artesia on Highway 285 near the old Cottonwood Winery. Don't miss it.
Is your home full of internet-connected devices? Make sure you have PVT Internet to power them all. Streaming entertainment, social media, shopping online, and every smart device in your home wants you to have high-speed internet from PVT. Share, learn, stream, or do whatever you want, as much as you want. Get connected today with PVT. Call 575-748-1241 or visit pvt.com to get connected with PVT high-speed internet today.
Guy Chevrolet Company in Artesia is your one-stop for all your automotive needs. From GM certified service and parts, body and paint repairs, to a great lineup of new Chevrolet, Buick, and GMC models, along with our hand-picked selection of new-to-you cars, trucks, and SUVs, we've got you covered. We invite you to come see us today for excellent customer service and the hassle-free buying experience you deserve. You'll find us right here on the corner of 1st and Main in Artesia, where we've sat proudly for almost 97 years, or at GuyChevy.com.
Back on the Good Morning Artesia radio show. City Council of Artesia met last night in regular session. Mayor Raye Miller is with us, and you've got the agenda in front of you there. What you guys work on yesterday?
Well, we didn't have a lot of items on the agenda, but some of the things took a little more time than normal. We were there about an hour and a half last night. We had a request for a camp out at J.C. Park, and there was quite a bit of discussion regarding, running a camp, charging fees and stuff. And so largely what they did was approve the use of the facilities for practice. But if it's going to be actually a camp and stuff, then we probably need to go back to committee and actually look at trying to arrive at some procedures and policies related to those type of activities. But anyway, some discussion there. We wound up having a new prosecuting attorney that has been hired for the city to handle our cases out in municipal court on behalf of the city. He introduced himself. He was dressed up in a suit with a tie and a white shirt. He looked extremely professional. And, of course, the rest of us, some of us were wearing shorts and a nice orange shirt, so we didn't look quite as professional as he did, but I think he'll do a great job for the city. We had several, items on the consent agenda, but all of them, there was nothing that was pulled off to actually have. But certainly things like we actually awarded the design or the request for engineering for the design on the East Hermosa project, which will be a project that will be done in future years from 13th Street to 1st Street on Hermosa, and it's part of that major artery reconstruction. We did North 13th, we did South 13th, and now we've done Hermosa out to 26th Street. The next one in the order of projects, and it's already out for the engineering to be done, is from 26th Street at Hermosa back to Grand at 26th Street. But anyway, that was on the consent agenda, and we're fortunate both of those engineering, they cost about $500,000 to get all of the survey work and the design and stuff done each. And we were fortunate that a couple of years ago the legislature actually appropriated capital outlay for both of those projects. And so it's truly a benefit that the city didn't have to use any of our own tax dollars to pay for both of those design projects and all the engineering involved. And I appreciate each one of our legislators and what they have done in the way of allocating capital for the city, because they've been a great supporter of our community.
When an engineering survey like that is done, and it may be a year or two or future years before a project takes place, do you have to go back and recertify that engineering report?
No, the engineering stays fine as long as there's been no change in the actual facilities that were in place at the time. And what will change is obviously they calculate an estimated cost of the project. Well, if the project gets delayed several years, the cost may be substantially higher at the time that it's actually put out for bid. But, they're doing the actual physical work at, what do we have in the way of size of diameter of sewer? What do we need in sewer? What do we need in water main lines through that artery? All of that type of stuff. Obviously on East Hermosa or West Hermosa there was some issue because, towards the end, the street was wider. It was narrower between 20th or 23rd or something and 13th Street. And so our right-of-way was sizable, but, when it was actually last time when a lot of those homes were built, the curbs were set inside the right-of-way, not at the edge of the right-of-way. But so those are the types of things that they're actually looking at, is what are the specifics. They do all the surveying to determine, is the road actually where it's supposed to be in the right-of-way and stuff.
That's true.
Yeah, no, it's, it's a thing where it will work for several years afterwards. But we're hopeful that some of these projects we may be able to actually get going in the next few years. And we're seeking some funding to help with some of those projects, because I think if you look at the two 13th Street projects as well as the Hermosa, the city of Artesia actually, through bonding, which we're repaying the bonds currently, spent about $21 million. And so if there are some federal or state funds available that would help offset, the 20th Street and the Hermosa project, it would really reduce how much we have to use of our own money, because if you don't have to use your own money for that, our infrastructure money can go for actually street maintenance. And we have a lot of interior streets that don't see the same level of usage, but they certainly can develop potholes and stuff that it's good to be able to actually take care of your inside as well. But anyway, it's a thing where that was actually done. In committee reports, the only thing that's probably noteworthy is the fact that our Budget and Finance Committee will actually be meeting here within the next week. And they're looking at some of the mid-year stuff. The city's been very fortunate. Our revenue stream here this fall has been very much improved. Now, I truly believe that it's not necessarily a long time or recurring type of thing. I think a lot of it is related to the projects that's been going on with our local refinery, all of their work in their new biodiesel facility, as well as the major turnaround that they had. The level of outside contractors, both staying at our motels, eating at our restaurants and stuff, has been significant over the past several months, and looks like continues, at least still currently, because I made a trip out to actually just look from the highway to see what was going on the south side of the road, because I don't get out of town too often. And
it's amazing, isn't
it? It truly is remarkable at the expense and the new rail facility that they've put out there, the huge unloading facilities, the tankage. I think there on the west side, there's some type of processing unit. And I took a picture because, there were guys standing on the top working, and to see the size of the man gives you because
how massive
it is, because it looks like it's like 3 stories high or more in height, when he was up there on the top working. But no, I think the refinery is spending $350 million. Had the opportunity on Monday to visit with the governor about some of our infrastructure projects on a Zoom call with her. And the other area that I visited with her about was just, the economic development of the capital expenditures that our local refinery has undertaken. And, the beauty of it is we always listen to legislators and the governor talk about, well, do we need to find some incentives to attract economic development and stuff? And certainly with like the film industry, we have sizable tax incentives for those folks to actually come to the state. Well, the refinery undertook spending $350 million in our community without any tax benefit from the state of New Mexico. They didn't go to the county for anything. They didn't go to the city. They've done it, and it's a thing where it will add jobs both inside the plant as well as the contracted rail service for years to come, which just helps strengthen, our overall economic activity here inside the city. Which truly I appreciate, and they're great corporate partners. They've been very good at helping with numerous community projects, whether it's been the library, the aquatic center. I know they were instrumental in a lot of the work that's been done on trying to add stuff along Eagle Draw in the way of walking tracks and exercise stuff. And can't say enough good things about their involvement. Of course, they're a public corporation based out of Dallas, but they certainly have been a great community corporate folk, and I appreciate everything they do.
Hopefully the governor recognizes that, or at least her people recognize that as well. That's very important to tell that story.
It is important, and I worry because they're our only refinery in the state of New Mexico. And oil and gas, fossil fuels on a national perspective is very negative in the perception at this point and in Santa Fe. And while they're just processing the product, they don't produce oil, they don't produce gas, but they're processing the product. They can certainly be painted with the same brush as being the old fossil fuel. And I see this biodiesel project as being one of those that, it's forward-looking thinking as to what there will be a need for fuels, but the biodiesel will be perceived as being quote greener than pumping it out of the ground
than the dinosaur
type. But anyway, it's a thing where and I think I don't know how much she was aware of the project, but I certainly wanted to bring it up on her radar because I see so many things out of our economic development department touting small projects around the state as being great things, but I haven't seen anything where, a project of this size that they didn't do anything in the way except just we all see the benefit from it.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I'm glad you were able to tell that story.
Yeah, but anyway, in the budget and finances, I was saying they'll be meeting and looking at some of the requests because obviously in the last few years we haven't made a lot of capital expenditures because of concerns about budget condition and stuff, and in the fact that our fund balances are in better shape than they have been, and we've seen some improvement in revenues. And some of these one-time capital items probably should be considered for expenditures to replace some equipment that we probably need to do inside the city, and also to begin to look at, do we have real shortfalls in certain departments? I mean, our streets and parks department before COVID was 14 people. I think today it's 9 people. Well, it's hard for them to do the work without having enough folks to actually man the equipment. And so do we need to add some people into select departments where, because of the hiring freeze that we instituted, they've really been drawn down. We also wound up having a resolution that brought our pay scales up to conform because a few of our salaries and our pay scales were below the new minimum wage, so we actually adopted that. And then under the chief of police, Kirk Roberts' presentation, he had one item. We had previously a couple of years ago, one of the foundations locally had actually given them a grant to actually redo some of the old police building facilities for some training. And unfortunately, they had not been able to get a contractor. It was kind of too small for most contractors and then too large for the small contractors.
Right.
And so they'd never been able to successfully get that project accomplished. But, the foundation had the money set aside for the police department and was asking if there was a way that they could actually spend it beneficially. And he had already been talking to me about possibility of getting a couple of additional new vehicles. And that sounds odd in a time when you can't get a new vehicle at the car dealer. But for whatever reason, there are actually some patrol vehicles or the vehicles that are designed for police activities. And with the problems in most, city and county budgets, there hasn't been as much purchase. So actually there are some of those vehicles available. And so he was looking at possibly seeing if we could set aside capital for a couple of those. And so my question to him was, would they consider dedicating those funds for the purchase of those vehicles and then equipping them with all the conversion to make them new patrol vehicles? And he talked to them, and they were. So we actually accepted that, and the cost to the two vehicles and the conversion will be probably $25,000 to $30,000 more than the grant was. But to actually get the vehicles, which we would have probably been considering in our budget adjustments to buy ourselves, it's a great way to actually afford stretching our dollars a little further. And so council went ahead and adopted that last night, even without it having run through the process, given the fact that we knew we were looking at doing some things. So I appreciate the council actually acting on it, even though it hadn't made it through all the regular committee reviews. Winds up being a thing where the other thing that we could really use some help on in the public is Jesse, who has been our code enforcement person, is retiring. And we've been advertising for his position since around the 1st of October. And we've had a few applicants, but so far haven't found a person to actually be that person. And, previously Cheryl Hinkle was in that position, and then here for years, Jesse has been in the position. And it's one of those jobs that, I think it's a nice job because, some folks are not happy, but Jesse has worked extremely well at working with people to actually get them in compliance where they have weed problems and stuff. And he has done it in a manner that winds up not offending folks. In other words, they realize that he's worked with them and that they haven't performed. So when he has to cite them, then they go, well, he gave us a chance and we didn't do what we said we would. But it would be really good if there's someone in our community or if they know of a friend or something that's looking for a good job, because obviously you're not stuck behind a desk all the time, but you're also not working on a shovel all the time. But it gets you out around and to a degree. Basically, they work in the planning department, but they have some freedom as to how they manage their job, the amount of time they're in the office, and the amount of time they're out in the field and stuff. And
well, you've got some free time coming up here in a little bit. So.
Well, see, that's one of the interesting things is that's probably the flaw I had with being mayor was I actually still work for a living.
You're not, technically you're not available for this position. So.
Unfortunately, what resulted was my golf game really sucks at this point. Because between the city and work, that's the area that I have failed. I I do still attend church regularly, and with my golf handicap, people have explained to me that I need to be at church repenting for that, and sometimes I agree with them and sometimes I don't.
Yeah,
but at
true.
this point, my handicap's probably realistic, as bad as I'm playing. But no. But that really would be an area that if someone knows somebody, because it's a real opportunity, and it can be, I mean, I look at folks and sometimes they get to a point in life and they want a career change.
Sure.
Well, something like this, it's the type of work to me that actually makes a lot of sense. Yeah, there's some paperwork involved and stuff, but it's not, you're not sitting behind a desk all day, 8 hours a day, crunching numbers, at the same time, you have some freedom as to when you spend your time outside. I mean, obviously, of a morning right now, I'd be spending my time inside instead of out doing the inspections in the colder weather early of a morning. But in the summertime, you probably are out in the field earlier of a morning and in the office in the afternoon in the heat of the summer. But anyway, it certainly would be good if somebody knows folks to get some folks to apply for that position. But also, I know that we've had, and we see it in our community, cases of COVID. I think about half of our lifeguard folks over at the Aquatic Center are actually out on COVID. Some have tested positive, and others are obviously close contact exposures. And so rather than risk continuing to have them work and possibly become infected and then infect the remaining staff, but that has put us in a position that some of the activities that normally would occur there are being modified somewhat just because of a good portion of the staff being out at this point. But hopefully we'll see, like what has happened in some of the other countries that have had this new variant, that it comes, it hits hard, and then it passes. And hopefully within the next couple of months it'll be kind of in our rearview mirror, and hopefully we won't see the tragedy of loss of life that we saw with some of the earlier variants, and it's more like a flu season, and we deal with it. But I also recommend, if folks feel ill, try not to expose everyone that you come in contact with, because I look at being mayor and the number of folks that I see on a daily basis, and it's a concern. If I have any type of symptoms, I'm staying home until I determine whether I've got it or not, because I certainly don't want to be the person that passes it to a group of folks. But
That's right. That's right. We're talking with Mayor Ray Miller, recapping last night's city council meeting. Are there a few more items there?
Yeah, just a couple other things. Obviously, Aubrey Hobson, our city clerk, who's running in council, is retiring at the end of this month. So we actually went ahead and appointed Summer Valverde, who was hired a few months ago to transition into that position. But we went ahead and made the appointment official last night. She was sworn in. And so as a result, Summer Valverde is now our city clerk, and Aubrey will be retiring at the end of this month. It's a thing where we also had discussion last night about the mayor's salary, the councilor's salary, the mayor pro tem's salary, and the judge's salary, because if the council made a change in the salaries, all of the existing councilors who voted for it wouldn't be eligible for it until after their next election. But obviously we're coming up on an election, and I think the salaries for the council hadn't been looked at since like 2009, or had changed since 2009. The judge's salary hadn't been changed since like 2016. Now the judge is not up for re-election this time, so that won't occur for a couple of years. But anyway, basically the council felt like that probably it was not appropriate to undertake it at this point, given our close proximity to an election, with the fact that a lot of them are running.
That's right. That's right. For different things.
And as a result, basically, they deferred making any decision on any of those salaries last night. For folks' knowledge, I mean, counselor is paid $600 a month, Mayor Pro Tem $700, the mayor's paid $800. I think the judge's salary is $44,000 a year. And you look at the hours that counselors spend, not just at council meetings, but at committee meetings and then in other things, because, I mean, obviously citizens with issues know that, this is my counselor for my district. If I have a problem, whether it's be with my dumpster, with my water, with whatever the issue is,
this is where you start.
This is where you start to see if you can get help, and they spend a lot of hours. In fact, I don't think any of our counselors would believe that they come close to making minimum wage, and in fact, a few of them. Because they all serve on multiple committees, and certainly several of our counselors are retired. And so as mayor, I've loaded those guys up with additional committees just so that we have a lot of counselors in each committee to actually make sure that issues are properly vetted and addressed. And I probably shouldn't have overused them, but they've been great. I mean, George Mullen and Terry Hill, I think, are on like 4 committees each, which, makes for a lot of meetings. But anyway, it's a thing where it's, nobody's in it for the money at this point.
Sure.
Type of thing.
But no changes.
No changes were enacted, and hopefully they'll actually look at that sometime in the next year when it's off schedule, so that it doesn't look like they're voting themselves in, so that when they get reelected that they're eligible for it. Because had they acted last night, the counselors like Mariscal, Moreau, Hagelstein, and Yahtzee would not have received any change if there had been a change made last night until after they were up for re-election 2 years from now. So, and of course, it could have affected Yahtzee, because if he is elected mayor, then he won't serve in both seats, and as a new mayor, he would have been eligible for any change in the mayor's compensation. But
that seems to be something that should be discussed in an off year, I guess.
I think that was the consensus that they made, and we just hadn't looked at it. We also had a visitor come in who is representing Holtec and their activity for the uranium storage facility between Carlsbad and Hobbs. And it's a thing where I know that they're just trying to gain support. But as I told him, I says, man, we met with your folks a year ago. I don't have any significant heartburn about what they're proposing, but I figure Santa Fe is the place that they have their most uphill battle and will have to work. And it's surprising, because I think at this point, one of the senators out of Las Cruces, or representatives, has a bill that he's trying to get the governor to introduce into the session this time to basically not allow any nuclear stuff come into the state. Well, obviously, we already have seen the government make a huge investment in WHIP, and it's low-level stuff, and it winds up being a thing where if that's an ideal storage for the nation for that type of material in those salt beds, why would we leave it? Because I know some of the material that is now stored down there was sitting in rail car sidings up at Los Alamos. Well, why would you let it sit in an area that's, subject to corrosion and stuff over time, rather than actually trying to find a permanent home for it that poses virtually no risk to the public? And a lot of it's the gloves and stuff that were utilized years ago by the lab. But anyway, he came and spoke, because we always have a period of time for our visitors. And actually, we also had almost all of the candidates there. All the mayor candidates except for the county commissioner were present at the meeting. and most of the new council position folks were in attendance at the meeting. But that certainly, if they get elected, their exposure to seeing how the process works, at least in the public eye, there's a lot of work, each week that we have a council meeting. The councilors are provided a tablet with, and typically it's 60 pages or more of information that they try to digest before the meeting. And so,
but you see that around election time, people decide they want to run for council, and then they show up at the meeting, and then win, or if they don't win, you don't see them again.
Yeah. Well, and that was one reason that I know some of us encouraged Councilor Mariscal to run 2 years ago, because there was an opening or a vacancy in his district, and he had been attending meetings for years. And he had a problem in his neighborhood. That's why he started attending, and he continued to raise the issue periodically to the council. And the council finally found a resolution to the problem, and he was thrilled.
Yeah.
But after the resolution, he continued to come to our council meetings.
Well, there you go.
And so he was abreast of many of the situations and issues that were going on. And so we asked him, and he decided he would run, and he's been an extremely good counselor. And so, I mean, there are a lot of very talented people. And, those are the people that I have met in this. I did not know Councilor Mullen before. And I tell you, George, I spent 4 hours going to training with him for newly elected officials and 4 hours back. Of course, he probably hated those 8 hours, but it gave me an opportunity to learn about him and, why he ran for council and his perspective on the city and stuff. And every decision I've seen him make, I see him as thoughtfully considering each topic, analyzing it, and then making what he believes is the best vote for the best good of Artesia. And that's all you can ask, is for people to actually listen, absorb, analyze, and vote what they believe is best for our community. And if a person does that, you can't fault them at all. So.
Kind of a rare situation, unfortunately, in our landscape nowadays.
I was pleased that he decided to run for re-election, because I came in the same time he did, and I didn't run, so I'm the bad guy, and and he's the good citizen.
Well, at least his name will be on the ballot this time.
That's true.
A little different from last time. Well, Mayor, thank you so much. We appreciate your time, and we have no problem at all visiting with you a few more times before your tenure is up. And thank you so much for coming in and helping to keep the community informed.
No problem.
All right, Mayor Ray Miller with us. Thank you so much. All right, let's get the